Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. How you doing? It's Big P here. Today we're joined by Julian McGowan from Dewsbury. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm good, mate. Good.
I've got some questions. I'm going to call this video a baker's dozen because I've got 13 questions for you.
Well, I'll do my best, and everybody knows that they're not scripted. And if I can answer them, I will. And if
Well,
I
I've
can't,
jotted them down. We normally do it off cuff, but I thought I'd jot these down for you.
yeah.
People are saying, "Oh, you should be more prepared."
No.
I try my best. Right, here we go. First question. Hearn and Jake Paul on the billboard with Taylor and Serrano. Eddie says, I'm not answering questions about Dillian Whyte Fury. Today is about Amanda and Katie. But yeah, he's on billboard in background. Have you seen the picture? I've just sent you it. What
I have, yeah. I'm pausing. I'm doing a Ken. I'm pausing because someone who's a traditionalist and someone who hates all this bollocks, like reality TV stars and YouTubers and these people who make millions and millions for not being very talented. I always struggle with that. But what I struggle with more is when you have trainers, managers, promoters who have bigger egos than the fighters. Yeah. So Katie Taylor's, she's unassuming, isn't she? She's not a, throat gestures and pushing and shoving kind of girl. And I saw her and Serrano have the head-to-head, and it was quite subdued. It was quiet. And then you've got the YouTuber and the good-looking promoter, haven't you? And it's all about them, and they talk about themselves. So I struggle with it, but then again, I see the irony in Jake Paul. If he does rise to become a serious player in boxing, we might as well have Hulk Hogan doing it. We might as well have Simon Cowell doing it. Bring out the clowns, bring out the comedians, bells and whistles, because this is where boxing's going now. It's showbiz, and often we don't get the product at the end of it, and it's the audience it attracts. So, look, what we're doing next, so we're going to have Eddie Hearn with his top off, or we're going to have him and Jake Paul doing a head-to-head and forget the fighters. We might as well, because we've created this, haven't we? We've created this culture ourselves by accepting it. So I don't know. Jake Paul has got a brother, Logan Paul. I just listen. If anybody can make a fortune, good luck to them. That's up to them. But I particularly don't care for it, and I will never accept that these guys are talented or they're hardworking. It's just nonsense.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Because. Well, this is how I looked at it, right? Jake Paul is the only promoter that's kind of like speaking to Eddie at the moment, because we've got Tom Brown, Lou DiBella, Al Heyman, Sam Watson, he's Al Heyman's guy who does up running about, Gary Shaw, Floyd Mayweather, Yvonne Michael, is it the French Canadian guy? None of them have a good. I'm not going to say there's not speaking to him, because they'd all work with him at drop of an hat if deal were right, but they're not friendly with him. And I think Eddie trying to get into this young lad's head and putting his son on a billboard, and then Jake Paul on a billboard. It's the first time I've ever seen that for a boxing show from Matchroom, where promoters' faces on there. And I just think that it's desperation stakes for him now, isn't it, when they're doing that?
Absolutely. He's like the face of DAZN, isn't he, Eddie? And it just becomes... It's just a pissing contest, isn't it? And
he's hanging on to his coattails, Jake Paul's, and Jake Paul knows that he's going to need Eddie as well, because not everybody wants to work with him, do they?
And we all know in 12 months' time they'll hate each other. And
God! And then they'll love
Eddie needs to be careful. Yeah, Eddie could create a monster there, because the one thing that Jake Paul does is he's very current and he's very cutting, isn't he? With how he just destroys people and rips them to bits. So Eddie needs to be careful, because you're getting in bed with a character like that, you're going to be at the end of his stuff at some point, and they'll fall out, because everybody in boxing falls out. There's very little integrity and honesty in boxing. But this, for me, it's cringeworthy. They'll tell you it makes money, and ultimately that's all they're about, is making the money. But you're not fooling anybody. But yeah, to get to your point, for a promoter to be on a fight poster or a billboard or all that social media stuff, I find it unbelievable, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, Eddie Hearn's ambition really is to die in his own arms. That's what he dreams of doing every night.
All right, then. Moving on. That's a good one, that. Fury versus Whyte. Why is it not signed? And why is Dillian Whyte silent?
Why is Dillian Whyte silent? Well, I was on your show a few days ago, and I kind of half confidently said Fury will Whyte will happen. You're generally right about these things, but you know, silence is deafening, isn't it? What I did watch is, I don't watch too many interviews on YouTube, but I did watch what's she called, Michelle something with Eddie Hearn. That's her. Yeah, I watched her with Eddie Hearn, and I thought his language was really, really telling. There were a few things that he said in that interview what just made me kind of smile. You know, he was talking about we haven't had a contract yet, and I'm like, well, do you promote Dillian Whyte? Do you not? Do you have a contract with him? Because all the noises were that you don't have a contract with him, but yet he kept using the word we haven't had a contract. So that was telling. And I think he said 3 times, because, you know, study of language is really interesting. And he said 3 times, if Dillian Whyte fights Fury, if. I'm like, why if? It's gone to purse bids. Purse bids being won. Not all we're waiting for now is a date and a location. That's all we're waiting for. We're not waiting for anything else. And to keep saying if, I thought that was an interesting comment. So I think Dillian Whyte, ultimately, you know, we get all these boxers, don't we? And Anthony Joshua saying, I'm my own man, I speak for me. No, they don't. You dance to the tune of a promoter or the management company, and everybody knows it. And Dillian Whyte is quiet right now because Eddie Hearn's told him to be quiet right now. It's either because the fight's not going to happen, or because they're not going to engage in the promotion, thinking, well, it's not our money. I don't have to promote the fight. You have to sell the fight now. And it could even be a tactic, if he does fight, to just say nothing the whole way through the press conference.
Why hasn't Dillian Whyte come out and said, I'm going into camp now, you guys, I'm not going to be coming out and saying anything. I'm just training for Fury and I'm going to knock him out. Why didn't he come out and said that? And then fans will get off his case, won't they? Because now all you're going to get is YouTubers putting videos out. I'm even seeing videos from Hatman, and he's supposed to be Team Matchroom, isn't he? He knows he's stayed quiet for a few days and he's had to come out now and go with public opinion. Why is Dillian Whyte staying quiet? Why is his fake brother, who normally we can't shut up, he's doing 10 interviews a day, and all he does is talk about boxing and get in front of the camera? We're not getting note from either of them, are we?
No, we're not getting nothing. So like I said, there's a combination of things. There's one, they've got no intention of that fight happening. That could be a realistic thing. For all you know, Eddie's saying, oh, look, forget that. We can do you and AJ. We can do a massive blockbuster pay-per-view on DAZN. That might be one option. Second, again, like I say, might be just staying quiet because he don't want to help those guys with the promotion. And Eddie Hearn's told him to just keep it quiet. Let's piss them off and let's say nothing, and let's put a load of doubt and a load of, you know, superstition around this fight. Or there's a third option maybe, which is, you know, the old saying that be careful what you wish for. And he's been shouting off saying he wants all these guys and he's going to knock everybody out, and he's you know, scared of nobody. And maybe he's got Fury now, and there could be that, you know, I don't believe professional fighters are frightened of each other, by the way, but you can be intimidated by somebody, and maybe he's staying quiet thinking, shit, I've landed this fight now and I'm in a world of trouble. Not only am I in a world of trouble in the ring, but Fury is the master of the press conference and the psychological warfare. So Fury's going to tear him to arseholes in the ring and out of the ring. So maybe he's just staying quiet for that. I don't know.
Exciting times ahead, Julian.
It's exciting times ahead if you like the drama outside, isn't it? It's but ultimately we just end up with this anticlimactic, either something happens or nothing happens. I mean, I think we were even lucky last year that we got 2 world title fights, you know, Fury Wilder and Joshua Usyk. I mean, it was looking like we were going to get neither. It makes it interesting for a lot of people watching, like a soap opera to a point. But then you get someone like myself, you get to that point like the Fury and Joshua fight. I never thought that fight was going to happen. And you just think, you know what, I can't be asked following this. I kind of half follow it now. But one thing what has become really clear to me, a lot of people were saying, And Whyte has no contract with Eddie. Whyte has nothing to do with Eddie Hearn as a free agent. Dillian Whyte's not a free agent. I think Eddie's told him to be quiet, and I think that's as simple as that. I mean, all this nonsense about, oh, we've got to be quiet right now because there's arbitration going on with the WBC. Arbitration, they've actually told you it's gone to purse bids. You're fighting for the WBC belt. What are you talking about?
I don't think there is an arbitration. I was the only one banging on about this for over 3 years. If you've got a problem, what you do, I think we spoke about this before. I had a chat with Mick Hennessy over dinner in Bulgaria, me and Dennis, and I was asking Mick, how did you ever get that fight with Howard Eastman and Hopkins? Because they were messing him about. Do you remember that fight?
Yeah, Bernard Hopkins and Howard Eastman.
Mick said, what I did, I got messed about that much. I got lawyers involved, and that's what Dillian Whyte should do. And we were speaking about that then. That was when Huey fought Pooler. Then Mick Hennessy straight to lawyers and get it dealt with if you've got it.
No messing.
WBC shit the pants because they got sued, didn't they, for 14 million years ago, didn't they? You remember?
Yeah.
They shit the pants to lawyers, but Dillian Whyte was dragging his ass, and Matcham were probably telling him to, because Matcham don't like litigation. They look at it as the lawyers are the only ones who are getting money and blah, blah, blah. Warren loves it because he probably has them on retainers like Dennis.
Does Frank,
yeah. Matcham don't like lawyers. They prefer just to get the fights done, and you know where money's going then, don't you? But Mick Hennessy always takes it to lawyers now. Dillian Whyte saying that he's had lawyers on job. Well, show us papers that have been served, and let's see some paperwork, because I think it's all a load of poppycock, mate.
Yeah, it's just subterfuge. I mean, ultimately, Dillian Whyte, if he doesn't take this fight, I don't care what anybody says, and anybody whispers in his ear, he's going to go down as somebody who's been offered 2 shots at the heavyweight championship of the world.
They had more than that offered him, money, but there's stuff.
Yeah, but two big numbers thrown at him for the Joshua fight at Wembley, for this fight in Cardiff, wherever. 2 massive opportunities to fight a fellow countryman for the heavyweight championship of the world. And if you turn this down, your career, forget what you've done. What an absolute... You're just going to go down just as somebody who's just a fucking messer, just a world heavyweight messing champion. Just a total messer. So I hope Dillian Whyte is just quiet and he's focused and he's training and he's started work and he's grafting and he shows up and he puts in a great shift. And that's what I really hope. But, you know, the most vocal of all the fighters that he's been avoided for so long, and then he gets a second shot and he's said nothing whatsoever.
We all remember the tweet that he put out, don't we, in 2020? That's on social media doing the rounds. Everything he said about Fury, coward this and coward that and all that. Well, it's come home to roost, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, Eddie's spinning that one, isn't he? Although his second hand is saying that's Usyk's people said it, but he said, oh, they think Fury's bottled it. They think they're all spinning this. Fury's bottled it. There's one thing Tyson Fury doesn't do. He doesn't bottle it. He might be a lot of things. He might talk nonsense at times, and you might not believe everything he says. Fury's not the kind of guy who would bottle it.
No, Tyson's not. He has to be right, though, for him financially before he gets involved in anything. He's very shrewd.
Oh, absolutely. Massively shrewd. I mean, this is generations of Furies who's going to want for absolutely nothing. I understand it. Tyson Fury knows his own value, but ultimately, he is a fighting man. Whatever said about him, he's a fighting man. And you sometimes get the impression if Joshua turned up with some 12-ounce gloves at his training camp and says, let's do it in sparring, he'd say, let's have it then. Fury would be the last man standing. I just think he's got that mentality about him, and we saw that, didn't we, in the last Wilder fight? You know, he was down twice, he was in trouble, and you got to nail him to the floor. So that's when you find out ultimately when you're on your ass in that 4th round for the second time, and you've got that buzzing noise in your ears and everything's fuzzy around you, and you think, right, this is a moment now, do I get up or not? All that money in the bank means nothing. Ultimately, it's at that point you find out who's a true fighter. You know, we've said this before, but we saw Joshua, didn't we, against Ruiz, just crumble like a little boy in front of our eyes. And then you saw Fury, the opposite. So no matter what's been said, I think Tyson Fury is too much of a man for any of these fighters. Although the Usyk fight's a good fight. That's an interesting one.
I don't think Fury's legs are like they were, do you?
No, definitely not. I mean, inactivity is a curse for everybody, isn't it? So he's had so much inactivity. I haven't done a count up, but he must have had 7 or 8 fights in the last 7 or 8 years. It's not good, is it? The activity for various reasons, putting 10 stone on, dropping the weight, living like he does. He's not going to have a prime, like some fighters like Lennox Lewis going into 34, 35. He's not going to be that good at that age. He's probably got 2 good years left in him, which is why we want to see him fight, and we want to see him fight regular so he can clean up and get out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Why was the deal on the table 6 weeks about step aside, and now Eddie Hearn's coming out saying it was never about step aside? Joshua didn't want step aside. Why didn't they nip that in the bud 6 weeks ago when the money were on the table?
Well, listen, if someone puts something out about you or me, I've offered you this, I've offered you that, and you were really, in principle, opposed to it, you'd go straight out there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd just onto social media and say, you cheeky bastards, you've just offered me step aside. You can offer me 100 million. I'm not stepping aside. I want my shot. That's what you'd do. But no.
So there's elements of doubt in Joshua's mind about the Usyk rematch then, isn't there? Because he's getting rid of all these trainers, and he's trying out all these trainers and getting rid of McCracken. But today's news has come out. Joshua's going back to being Joshua. But yeah, why don't he go back with McCracken then? Why has he got rid of McCracken if he's going back to being Anthony Joshua? That straight 1-2 style, have a tear up and kind of thing, instead of trying to be Pernell Whitaker. So why hasn't he gone back to McCracken and said, look, Rob, take me back, train me. I apologise for trying all these other trainers out. I'm not a boxer, I'm a brawler kind of thing. He's like got a bit of a Frotch style about him, hasn't he?
He definitely has. The one thing I will say, I always like to be really balanced in my argument. I watched the Joshua and Usyk fight last week. It's probably the second time I've seen it, or the third time I've seen it. And I'm not digging out other coaches, but I mean, those other guys, those assistant coaches, not nonsense. But even with McCracken, I have to say, there was no urgency in that corner. The instruction was poor, Russell. It was really poor, basic instructions. And at no point did he say, look, you're down on the cards, grit your teeth, just walk him down and let your hands go, because you've been too circumspect, you've been too tentative. You got to go now. There was no motivational speech in that corner, was there?
No.
Coaches are tactical. You have to be tactical, but there comes a point in a fight when you're that fight's slipping away from you. You step away from being tactical, a bit like Angelo Dundee with the famous, with Real Energy blowing it. So there comes a point that coach has to get the bull by the horns and make, and say, you got to go for this now. It was a little bit like, for me, both my heroes, but Ray Leonard's my favourite fight, but it was like watching the Petronellis in Marvin Hagler's corner. No sense against Sugar Ray Leonard with the Petronellis telling him, Hagler, the fight was slipping away from him. You're behind, you got to really step up, Marvin. Keep doing what you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. It was like insane, and I have to say that McCracken's he's a top coach, he's an elite coach, but in both of the Joshua losses, I didn't think the instruction was great. I didn't think the corner work was great. So I do wonder if that's resonating or going around in Joshua's head, thinking, why are these guys telling me I'm boxing beautiful? Why are these guys encouraging me? I'm getting my ass kicked here. I'm a mile behind on points. So it wasn't great corner work, Russell, honestly.
Do you feel that there were too many cooks spoiling the broth?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, you have one head coach, or you have one boxing coach, as far as I'm concerned, and then you have other people who can do certain things. Observe the fitness, do the metrics, do the punch stats. Do a bit of fitness, a bit of conditioning. That's fine. But ultimately, this is boxing, isn't it? This is not strength training. I mean, the other guy who was in the corner with him, who kept shouting, "Beautiful, AJ, beautiful," and it's become like a bit of a joke, hasn't it? That instruction, it was absolutely dreadful. Sit down.
Jim McDonnell used to do that when James DeGale were on Exercise Rack. He'd be like, "Beautiful, James, beautiful. We'll make you a 20-round fighter, beautiful." And I like,
you're getting good impression, and you're getting beat. It's just, honestly, that there were most of the time with my fighters in the corner, you can imagine I'd be quite diplomatic and quite technical. And then there were times I just fucking, especially with Sykes, I just scream at him. I said to him against Andy Morris after 10 rounds, it's fuck all in this fight. You got to just go for it now. Forget whatever tactics we've talked about. Just get your head down and just let your hands go non-stop until you've got nothing left. There comes a point you have to say that. McCracken never said anything. Just keep throwing the 1-2. Keep throwing the 1-2.
Maybe McCracken knows that if he let his hands go, he'd be out on his feet.
He probably would have done, to be fair.
He didn't have it in his tank.
But then he probably would have done. But then you're coaching somebody to lose, aren't you? So you haven't given them the skills to be adapt. And you know, I do think you know, Usyk's clever. He's a brilliant fighter. But let's not say that you know, Alexander Usyk on that night would have beat any heavyweight in history. He just made Joshua look really what he was, which was very, very limited. But honestly, we don't want to see fighters get hurt or injured. But there is a point where you go out on his shield, isn't there? I mean, that was the lamest title defense I've ever seen. You know, it just, I think there was a moment, my mate was chatting to me the other day, Stuart, and he says there was a moment in the 6th round where Joshua had quite a decent round. And then in the 7th round, you know, Usyk put it on him in the first 30 seconds.
Went through gears, didn't he, after that, didn't he?
Went through the gears and he almost like subdued him again. It's like, just push a little bit more. Just have a bit more devil in you.
You feel that he couldn't push no more because he thought it'd be like done. I
think there's an element of that. I just, like I said, I don't like to see fighters get hurt, but there's nothing more meeker for me than to see somebody coached to lose and somebody just hand the titles over. I genuinely thought Joshua was poor as Usyk's was good. And obviously you can only do what the other man lets you, you know, but when people say, oh, Usyk wouldn't let him do anything, come on, you can at least grit your teeth and have a little bit of a go. And he never did that. He never took the fight by the balls. So that's, for me, is somebody who, as I've said before, he's not a natural fighter.
Okay. Why didn't Ern tell them from day one that the steps that we've done that one? Where does this leave the heavyweight division now? Because we've got Fury, Usyk, Wilder, Joshua, Joyce, Dubar, Ergovic, Parker, Huey, Fury. They're all parked up, aren't they? Chisora, nobody's doing that. There's not happening. Chisora's not in that mix, in my opinion. But out of them 11, there's no, it's happening, is it?
You just don't know what's going on.
Joker as well in that mix.
But no one's jumping up and down. The managers aren't jumping up and down to make it happen either. Sam Jones isn't jumping up and down saying, I want my fighter to get his shot. What's going on? Everybody, it seems, is really happy for this go slow in the heavyweight division. And, you know, they're happy to get big money fights when they happen. Inactivity, they seem to love. And inactivity is an absolute curse. And I struggle with it. So, yeah, the heavyweight division's on hold right now. I mean, how many times do we have to see rematches? Rematches can be a good thing if the first fight is brilliant or if it's controversial, but how many times are we going to see rematches and trilogies now of fights that, do you know what? All right, it's a decent fight, but once was enough. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. Joshua says he's going back to the old AJ. We spoke about that, haven't we, more or less? Well, why is he? You know, why has he got rid of McCracken then if he's going back to AJ? Why is he training at wherever he's training at UK and using these Angel Hernandez, Joby Clayton and all these Klingons?
I mean, the thing is with that as well, what is the old AJ? You know, the old AJ against limited opposition and old men could at times look explosive. But each time he's come up against adversity, he hasn't looked like, he's just looked like AJ, not the old AJ. He's just shown himself to be found wanting, you know, every single time. Now he came back against Klitschko, but I always like to think that Joshua didn't snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. I think it was the opposite way around. I think Klitschko's age and his inactivity just couldn't finish the job. So I always think
you're an old man that pushing 42.
Joshua didn't win that fight. Klitschko lost it. Yeah, it just.
Well, if that knockout didn't happen in 11, they were going to shaft him out cards anyway, weren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, we still had the like I said, the Joshua Usyk fight. We had 115, 113 or something, didn't we?
One more round at the draw.
Yeah, and I don't know where that came from. A little bit like well, we've talked about this before, haven't we? But when Usyk fought fucking Chisora, people thinking Chisora won that fight. I think I had it about 11-1 or something. It was a, you know, I thought it was a masterclass, to be honest. But
yeah,
the heavyweight divisions are, it's a real mess, and we keep getting called it's a blue ribbon division, and it's exciting. But is it exciting? The thing is when we get the fights, we get some good action, don't we? You know, we got Fury and Wilder.
it's like waiting for Christmas, though, isn't it? And Easter.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and you just get tired of it, don't you? I don't think inactivity is good for anybody. These guys, why are they not just taking a few knockover jobs in between? I don't think.
Don't you have to take the smaller side of the money to get into position to be the A side? I don't.
Of course you do, but I always think as well of Julio Cesar Chavez. You know, over 100 fights, and Chavez would fight a mandatory, and then he would just have a non-title fight. It was always having non-title fights with Chavez, but that's why he was so sharp and so brilliant when he rose to the elite level. And maybe I'm talking old school now, but why are fighters not keeping busy? Why are they just, I always kept Sykes busy, even when, we had a non-title fight as a British champion for 600 quid in a sports centre against some guy he just took out. So I just needed to keep him out. I took, when he was mandated for the British title the second time, could have just sat at home scratching his balls, but kept him busy against one of Mark Bateson's shows, other shows, one of Dennis's shows. Keep fighters busy and keep them sharp, and they'll be masters of the craft, but nobody's doing that now. So the heavyweight division, they're all inactive, aren't they? Dubois, Joe Joyce, none of them are fighting more than once every 6 months. It's a bit of a joke, really.
Yeah. Okay. If Joshua doesn't fight Usyk and Whyte doesn't fight Fury for whatever reasons, though obviously Eddie Hearn can spin it how he wants because he's got that many YouTubers in his pocket and media. But if them two fights don't happen, what sort of reflection is that on British boxing?
It's a terrible reflection, and I think there'd be a disgrace, because I always believe you have a man in the mirror moment, and at some point you have to look in the mirror and like what you see back and be proud of your accomplishments. And you got to be remembered for the fights that you did take and not the fights that you didn't take. And I think Whyte especially will be remembered, for the fights that he didn't take, because at least AJ to some extent being at the top of the mountain twice. And he has taken he did take a rematch, albeit against a guy who didn't do a lot of training. But Whyte, he's the one who talks louder than anybody, isn't he? And he's just somebody who he'll be viewed as, I think, as a laughing stock.
Yeah,
I do. I think it'd be a disgrace. I think it's you know what? I really feel it's a disgrace for all those hard-working fighters out there who aren't quite world level and never get that world title shot. But it's their dream, and they work hard and they train hard and they're dedicated people and they earn shit money. Even some of these guys who, in the 90s and stuff and fought for European belts for like crap purses, those guys never got that opportunity to fight for a world title. And these guys, it's a little bit like society, isn't it? It's that fucking entitled society. They feel they're entitled. And I think the heavyweight championship of the world clearly doesn't mean anything to Dillian Whyte. If he doesn't take this opportunity, I'll say this and I might change my mind, but honestly, if I'm nobody, no one at all in boxing, but if Dillian Whyte doesn't take his opportunity, I won't talk about him again. It's not worth the fucking... If I were you, I wouldn't even mention him, mate. It wouldn't be worth the airtime. And Joshua, I would forgive a little bit more, because I think he's very, very mentally fragile right now and he's looking for answers and he's not going to find them. I think he's really struggling, honestly.
Yeah, I do. But he's not paying my bills, so fuck him. Right.
No, he's not paying mine.
Yeah, or yours. Could we end up with a total stalemate in the whole division and fans causing anarchy and just downing tools and going to UFC?
Well, this is what happens, isn't it? We're boxing consumers and the boxing fans have been taken from mugs for quite a long time now. But at least sometimes when we get dangled carrots, we do end up with some big fights and some big events. But in the heavyweight division, it's become a joke. And I might switch off from it. And anybody who says, yeah. In 2014, I've mentioned this to you before, I stopped coaching. And for 2 years, I didn't watch boxing. I was so disillusioned with boxing and so sickened with it. So from 2014 to 2016, I didn't watch any boxing. I cancelled Sky Sports. I cancelled Box Nation at the time. And I just didn't watch it. And I didn't fucking miss anything, Russell. I just got asked to come back in to coach a young amateur at the time. And with hindsight, I shouldn't have done it. But otherwise, I probably won't be watching it now, honestly. I just got dragged back into it. And I helped a kid out who needed some help. And it was one of those things, but I was quite happy not watching it in 2014, 15. I genuinely switched off from it. I couldn't tell you the big fights that happened then. I might have seen some of them retrospectively, I might have watched one of them and watched another one, but I literally wouldn't watch it. I thought it was dying then. And I think people say, you talk nonsense, McGowan, boxing is not dying. Boxing at the very highest level, there's a lot of people making an absolute fortune from it. But the levels down from that, all the way down to grassroots, boxing's on its arse, mate. And I understand why people watch UFC. I understand why people switch off. We've also got a different generation now, haven't we? We've also got a generation of people, bizarrely, who don't watch TV. My kids don't watch TV. They go gaming. They're on the Kindles, the phones. They don't watch television. It's like the world's changed quite a bit. And I do wonder, honestly, if boxing in 10 years' time is going to be relevant at all.
Yeah.
And if it's not relevant, it'll be partly because society's changing, but it'll be partly because of the greed of the people running it. I've just run it into the ground.
Yeah, I agree with that. Dillian Whyte to Sky, yes or no? I'm going to go no. Stays loyal to
I would say no as well. I know Adam Smith mentioned it, didn't he? He never closes the door, Adam Smith. I kind of like that. He always says, we'd love to see this on Sky. We'd love to see that on Sky.
But he's an architectural, whatever the word is, company man, isn't he? He don't burn his
He's a diplomat, yeah. He's a politician. He's an absolute he's a diplomat. He knows exactly what he's saying. But I don't think we'll see Dillian Whyte on Sky. I'll be surprised if we do. Unless him and Eddie have a fallout, because, is he promoting Whyte or not? We all know.
Well, he ain't going to deal with Whyte.
He doesn't have a deal, but he doesn't need to have a deal with him, does he? He just needs to be saying the right things in his ear. And when you, like I said, back to what I said earlier, when you're using language like we haven't seen a contract. If you don't have a deal with Whyte, and it's Ben Shalomo's went to represent him, Eddie, why would you see a contract anyway?
Well, Eddie won't see a contract because Whyte's advisors will see it, won't they?
Yeah.
And Whyte, they won't have to tell Eddie about it because he's not going to promote it in show, is he?
But he kept saying we, didn't he? And I'll tell you what is
interesting. He might be trying to throw scent off. There might be problems behind the scenes that we don't know about.
Yeah, you never know, but I'll tell you what is interesting though, Russell. I looked today, just curious, because I knew it was going to come on. Now, marketing and online presence is everything. So I looked at Matchroom's website and talk about, conning the public. So Matchroom's website has been updated in certain areas and not updated in other areas. So what I mean by that, it basically gives a list of our boxers, our Matchroom boxers. So, it mentions Lee Wood, says, he's fighting in a couple of weeks, and here's the latest news on Lee Wood. They've still got Canelo Alvarez listed. So even though Alvarez, and what happens with Alvarez is the news is just about the Billy Joe Saunders fight. It never mentions his last fight with Caleb Plant. They've got Dillian Whyte on there. And they're basically, for someone who's so hot on social media and such a polished company, Matchroom, they're still advertising boxers who they no longer promote. And it's just that trick, isn't it? It's that trickery that they're doing. For anybody who hits that link and sees Matchroom, you see Canelo. He's the first picture that you see.
Canelo was fighting with Heyman.
Yeah, but Canelo is the first picture you see on Matchroom. So Eddie was all about the production. It was all about online. We've got the best online presence of any of the promotional outfits, but you haven't updated your fucking website. You've still got Canelo Alvarez down as one of your fighters. It's just go on Matchroom, mate, and have a look when you finish this.
I will. That's the belly of the week for Eddie.
Yep.
Right. people give me loads of stick for this, but I'm going to hark back to the Super Six and leading up to it. I know people are going to give me stick for it. Look at Carl Froch's run of fights, and I'm going to tell you what he said to me before he fought for his first world title. He said, I'm going to have a run of hard fights. As why he says, what's point in me doing 2 week on my own and then 12 week with Rob to just fight knockovers? There's going to be no interim belts, Porky. It's just going to be world title fight after world title fight when I get it. And he told me that before he fought Albert Rabaki, who were a replacement for Dennis Inkin for WBC. He ended up fighting Pascal, didn't he? That's true to his word. He had 12 world title fights on trot, no interims. He went straight from British outright to world title, didn't he? Right. He didn't want to waste a camp and then fighting knockovers. So he got the best out of his ability, didn't he? He wrung everything he could out in his career. And I look at the run of fights that he had. I mean, Pascal went on to beat Dawson and Diacono. He took their O's, didn't he? They were pound for pound.
Yeah.
Roch dealt with Pascal, didn't he? Robin Reed McGee before then. McGee went on to win a world title. Robin Reed, Robin's career. Then you look at Jermaine Taylor beat Hopkins twice. He'd done him. 6 years later, Taylor was still a world champion. Do you know what I mean? Then you look at all the rest of them, Abraham, Kessler, Glenn Johnson, all that, don't you? Bute, Grove twice and that. He went on a run that puts this lot nowadays to shame. Or isn't there a quality out there now? Where's the quality gone? Where's the next Clinton Woods? I don't want to harp on about people that I know and respect, but where's the next Clinton Woods?
Well, in terms of Carl Froch, I mean, I will have missed some of those fights. I saw the majority of them because of what I said earlier. There was a couple of years I just didn't watch boxing.
Well, Froch retired in 14, didn't he, May?
Oh, well, there you go. So I'll have seen the majority. But I always remember when he beat Pascal. Was it on ITV? Wasn't it? I'm
ITV, sure 6.6 million watched it. I was there inside, mate.
It was a brutal fight, actually. It was an absolute brutal fight, and I always enjoyed watching him. And I thought it was like a modern day Rocky Marciano, wasn't he? You know, he stepped up. And the thing is if you look at him and you say, you know, people always go to the Andre Ward. They never mention all these brilliant fighters.
Andre Ward were hanging on for life, and ask his trainer Virgil Hunter. And he was hanging on for life in the last 3 rounds.
It was a good fight, and he was a brilliant fighter, was Ward. So there was no disgrace in getting beat by a guy like that. But if you look at his record, as you say, it was a who's who, wasn't it, all the way through. And also what I loved about him is he got out at the right time. He'd done everything he could. He was gone down as a one of the best British fighters of the last 20, 30 years. Absolutely no doubt about that. And I thought it was a brilliant fighter, but I love that mentality. I love that attitude. And he wasn't always chasing the fame. Well, he wasn't chasing the fame, was he? And he didn't love the media, and people always thought he could be a little bit truculent and a little bit awkward around the press and things. But I liked him.
He's a bit dry, Carl, you know. He's very funny. Yeah. He's a bit dry. So I've seen him say things, and I thought, God, he's going to get hammered for that. But he's actually a nice kid. But people,
I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say this, Russell, and I wouldn't say it to his face because it'd stretch me. But he had fantastic taste in women as well. Did Froch, didn't he? Absolutely.
She's lovely, Rachel.
Yeah, I can imagine. It was always great watching the fights, mate, and watching his lovely wife as well. But
listen, mate, he's had it off, hasn't he? He's married with 3 kids, multi-millionaire, 2 Ferraris in garage.
Yeah,
he's had it off, mate. And people should say, do you know what? I always go on, lad.
I do, because he's like the Adam Fogarty of boxing, isn't he? Fogarty was that kind of working guy. Carl Fogarty, sorry, made all that shitload of cash, but he never really became a dickhead, did he? It was, it was just a good guy. So I thought, Carl Fogarty. So I thought, good. And to your point, we might have fighters around who have got that mentality now, but they're not displaying it. I mean, you only have to look. We've talked about the heavyweights, okay? You look at the lightweights. You got the 4 best lightweights in the world. We all know who they are. None of them have fought each other. They're all, every time they fight, they put something on Instagram or whatever, and they're challenging the others, and I'll kick your ass, this and that. None of them are fighting. None of them are showing any signs of even having unification.
What about Callum Smith? Is he going to fight Beat?
No.
They're not chasing anybody. The Callum Smith's ended up doing well for his son. Joe Gallagher's navigated him through choppy waters, and he's ended up with millions and millions of pounds, Callum Smith. But yet, what is his body of work?
It's not that great, is it? And that's the thing. And he
George
really
Groves,
was.
Froch got there first.
Yeah, I always
people
thought
are going on about Andre Dirrell and people like that, and Pascal. Froch got there first with them. Took their own. He took Pote's old, didn't he?
Yeah,
knocking everybody out pound for pound.
I do think they played him a little bit, though. I mean, he would have never beaten Canelo, but they didn't give him much notice, did they? You know, it was a very, very difficult training during a pandemic and the situation he was in compared to Alvarez. And people say we should always be ready, but it looked like a beaten fighter before he got into that ring. And I know Gallagher wasn't happy about the 30 days or whatever notice they got. So they got played a little bit there. And I think they made the offer that much money that he couldn't turn it down. So listen, for him, as far as he's concerned, Smith, he's made a hell of a lot of money. Probably have 2 or 3 more fights at light heavyweight. Then he'll get out.
Will he go down as an all-time great?
No, not at all. No.
Yeah. Even though he ended up with Ring Magazine, but do you think it's one of them situations where they were navigated around choppy waters like Joshua to get the loot?
Absolutely. It's all about, for some guys, you have to get the right fights at the right time, don't you? And then you might take the odd gamble.
And then you look at Callum Johnson, you look how exciting he is, and he's like an avoided fighter as well, isn't he?
He's going to be one of those fighters, though. You're never truly going to know how good he is because he's not going to get. He might get his opportunity, he might not. But because he's so inactive, how will we ever know? They're not getting the opportunities. They even don't get them because they're not sucking up to the right promoters, or they're too dangerous, you know, or they don't want it. It's one of those things, and I feel for guys like that because the career's not a wasted career. He's had a successful career, but they're underachievers, aren't they, compared to the ability that they've got?
Yeah, I think Callum Johnson's had, like Hughie Fury, bad luck. I think it's bad luck. Some of them have good luck, don't they? They have a great lot of good luck. I think he's had bad luck.
Well, Hughie Fury might only be, 26, 27?
Yeah.
But it's a good job he's that young because even if Hughie Fury, you know, turns over some big names, he's not getting his shot for at least 3 years, is there? There's nothing doing at all for the likes of Fury for 3-4 years. And this game can sicken people because you've got the fighters who talk about fighting, who don't fight. And then you've got the fighters who don't talk about fighting, who just want to fight, who can't get a fight. And it becomes a massively frustrating sport. You can tell, we've had a few conversations this week. I'm getting so frustrated with boxing right now. It's just like, I want to see Garcia against Tank. I want to see Lomachenko back in the mix. Before he's an old man. I want to see these big fights. I want to see BTBF in big fights. I want to see some big fights. I want to see Fury against anybody. I don't care. I don't care who Fury fights, if I'm being honest. I just want to see the big names fighting frequently. You know, I'm less bothered about making the big fight every time. I'm more interested in just seeing the fighters. But the problem that you've got now, these guys won't get out of bed for less than 5 million, 10 million, will they? And that's the problem. The mentality is all wrong. So the part-time fighters,
the
part-time boxers, full-time celebrities.
Correct. Last 3 questions. BT, DAZN, Eurosport, Discovery. It looks like DAZN are out at picture to buy BT Sport, and it looks like Eurosport, which is owned by Discovery, they're in the picture and they're in the mix, and it's 50-50 whether they're going to merge. What do you think to that?
It wouldn't surprise me. I think Kent knows the business side of it, and you do a hell of a lot more than I do. But I was never bought into DAZN because I looked at that as a business, and that was it 1.5 billion in debt initially about 2 years ago when it launched, and now it's about 700,000-800,000 million in debt. Those are huge numbers. You know, it's predominantly a boxing channel. I know there are other sports, etc., but I always get the feeling it's never really taken off in terms of massive fights. I know we've had a couple of big ones, like we had, you know, Canelo against Saunders, didn't we? But Eddie hasn't delivered that big golden unification fight that I think he thought it was going to deliver for those guys. And if you're a shareholder now, if you're one of those, private investors, you're going to be making certain noises about pulling your money, aren't you? That's what I would be doing. I'd be looking to sell my shares.
They're going to say, is this the Eddie Hearn show or what? Why are we seeing Eddie Hearn on billboards and in every interview and we're not hearing note from the fighters? Why don't we hear anything from Joshua Buatsi?
Well, that's the thing. Eddie Hearn's created a brand for himself, hasn't he? Eddie Hearn is his own brand now, and that's all he's interested in is himself. Like Buatsi. I mean, what was it? 2016. He was the Olympian, and we're now in 22, aren't we? So 5.5 years on. I mean, seriously. I mean, where is he after 5.5 years in the pro ranks? Is absolutely nowhere, is he? That might people say he's unbeaten. What are you talking about? He hasn't beaten anybody of note whatsoever. And then we keep hearing about he's got these fantastic skills and all this ability. Joshua Buatsi, another wasted career. I'm not saying he won't go on to achieve a world title. He might not. What I'm saying is no big fights, no big domestic fights, no regular activity. There's no buzz around him. The only buzz around him is when he fights and the promoters are really pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. Otherwise, he's like an invisible fighter as far as I'm concerned. And
you know what he needs to
5.5 years.
You know what he needs to do with Joshua Buatsi? He needs to go to Adam Booth, the dog. He's the best. Adam Booth.
Oh yeah, he'll have a full camp over there with Adam Booth, won't he? At this rate, he'll have a full camp at this rate, won't he? What he needs, it's just there's no development, is there? There's no development for these guys. Like I said, the part-time fighters, and I just think if you've got that pedigree, you've got the amateur pedigree that Buatsi has. It's like Joe Cordina. He's exactly the same. These are the class of 2016. All right, I'm going to hark back now, and I'm a stuck record. If you go back to 1984, that US Olympic team, one of the best, probably the second best Olympic teams.
Meldrick Taylor.
Holyfield, Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Paul Gonzalez, all those guys. They're absolutely
Don't forget Hopkins could have been on that team, but he got jail a couple of months before, didn't he?
He got banged up, didn't he? But if you look at where they went, you look at how quickly Pernell Whitaker went to become a world champion, 2-3 years. Meldrick Taylor, 3 years. Those guys were prolific. They were out regular. Evander Holyfield won the cruiserweight title in 1987 against Dwight Muhammad Cowie. 3 years on, Evander Holyfield got the bronze, exactly the same as Joshua Buatsi, and he beat Dwight Muhammad Cowie in the fight of the year over 15 rounds to win the WBA Cruiserweight Championship of the World. That's after 3 years of being a pro. Compare him to Joshua Buatsi, again, bronze medalist, 2016 Olympics, 5.5 years on. He's done absolutely fuck all. So how can you come? That's why one became a legend of the sport, and the other is just going to become a great big underachiever. And that's again, people are talking about the 80s again. I'm giving you a direct comparison to what happened to Holyfield and his bronze medal, and to what's happened to Joshua Buatsi. I mean, what is he going to do? Fight for an interim world title, and is he going to be satisfied with that? Just garbage management. 5 to 8, whatever they call it. Rubbish management, rubbish guidance, rubbish development, garbage.
Just 2 more questions. Williams, Eubank, who wins?
I think it's a really, really good fight. I think you've got probably a fringe world class. I'm going to get bombed out for this. I think you've got a fringe world class fighter in Eubank. He's probably the 8th, 9th, 10th best middleweight in the world. I genuinely think he's not the Golovkins he's knocking on, the Charlos. I don't think he's anywhere near that level, the Andrades. You got someone who's a fringe world-class fighter, and you got Williams, who I genuinely believe is a domestic Euro level fighter.
So do you think Eubank's Euro stroke world class and the other kid's British stroke European?
Yeah, because what happens is that's my lens. That's the lens I use. I don't use the lens of, I don't even know what the world rankings are, by the way.
Yeah,
but if someone says to me, Liam Williams is, what are you talking about, McGowan? You're talking shit. Liam Williams is number 2 by the IBF. I don't give a fuck. I don't know if he is. I don't know if he isn't. I don't care less. Basically, what you've just said is how I view it. I don't view Liam Williams anywhere near the level of a Tony Simpson or Colin Jones, not all. Liam Williams fought Andrade, and we saw the difference in world level and that kind of domestic fringe European level. To answer your question, it's a good fight. I think Williams has got the better trainer. Before anybody shoots me down, Booth's a good coach. He's a good strategist. Roy Jones is just a great, great legend of the game who does a bit of coaching. There's a total difference. You can see he's doing the wrong things with Eubank, but I think Eubank has a little bit more strength about him. He's got a couple more gears, and I think he'll probably win a tough fight on points.
Yeah, that's yeah, I think that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's fought at 168. Williams was really a 154, so they're fighting at 160. A good big one beats a good little one, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a good fight. I'm going to watch it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well done to them who put that fight on. Positivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last one I want to talk about. I'm not going to mention no names. What do you think about these people that walk around doing these raffles at boxing shows with buckets full of pound coins and all this, and saying we're going to give so much for charity and all that? A lot of people complaining to me in emails about it. What do you think about it all?
That's a great question, actually. I didn't expect that one. Well, I've been around amateur boxing since I was 15 when I had the first fight, and I've been around more shows than most because when I was 16, I used to do a lot of handing up for coaches. So I've been, I don't know, I've been to hundreds of amateur shows. I've been to 80, 90, 100 pro shows. I don't know. There's some right bastards in this sport, mate. The charity and all this kind of stuff. There's double envelope deals going on. Shut up, McGowan, I don't care. There's a 2 envelope jobs going on. There's all kinds of things under the guise of charity. And if anybody is holding an event for charity, and I don't care who you are, and you're skimming off those proceeds for vulnerable, disabled, just people in need, you're a fucking first class twat. So it goes on, unfortunately, and I've seen it, and you see when money's taken at shows and you never see it go to the right places and the right home. I think it's horrendous because people say, who are you talking about specifically? I've seen it a lot, been around the game a long time, and I know what goes on.
Yeah, what do you think's the answer to just not buy these raffle tickets then?
I think it's like anything, you know, they say when they advise you to the various charities that if someone knocks on your door, if it's a charity knocks on your door, not to give to them. So, you know, I won't go into detail about what I do for charity. That's a personal thing. I don't give to a formal charity. I do something else for another, what I consider to be a charity, and that's what I do. And I just believe sometimes in helping people out who are in need, but there are ways of doing that. It's a little bit like the ice bucket challenge. When it all came out, the chief executive was on like 200 grand a year or something. You know, it's a really dangerous thing because a lot of charities have massively struggled during COVID. And I just think, you know, my personal view, without going into too much detail, is, you know, help people out any way you can. Sometimes it's not just about money. Sometimes it's about giving your time up, volunteering your time, and doing various things. But don't put your guilt onto me and put a bucket in front of my nose asking me to get a tenner out, 20 quid out, when I know that half of that money is going to go in your skyrocket. Don't do that to me. So it goes on in boxing, it goes on all over the place, mate. Or just help people out in need, do good things. But I know what you're talking about. As soon as you said it, I've seen it, and it's just, I'm naive. I'm really naive, mate. And I know I wet behind the ears when I got into boxing. I probably still am, actually, in some ways. But the things that I've seen, there's some fucking horrible people in this sport, mate. Thieves, wrong uns, shithouses, to quote you, mate.
Shithouses is what I quote, yeah.
And sorry, could I just say, I always like to add balance, not talking about the charities. There's some fantastic people in boxing as well who give up their time. There's some absolute diamonds, some coaches out there, helpers.
Take nothing out of the game and drive all over.
They put into the game. Yeah, I know club secretaries, and I know people who make up the rent that week on that building. So for balance, there are some fantastic people in boxing, and that includes boxers. But it tends to be all these people who, I don't know, there's certain things, when people talk about things all the time and sell themselves to you, and they talk really loudly about, we're doing this for charity, I'm always a little bit like, I don't know, I think it's vulgar talking about that kind of thing, and people really build themselves up, don't they? But it's a lot of the people who sell themselves as being pillars of the community, they're fucking right frauds. And often it's the ones who are really humble and really quiet, who say nothing, who do good things.
Bit like Fury's 7 million to homeless.
Did you see Eddie on Michelle Phelps? He made a comment about that, did Eddie? Didn't it? It was quite smart, actually. He made a comment about it, and he just sort of smiled, and that smile just said, "You never gave your purse to charity." Why
Channel 4 went chasing it up, didn't they? And they shut it down, didn't they? Said it's not to do with anybody but where we give our money to.
If he did, amazing. If he didn't, why would you say that?
He might have been trying to make out to somebody that he didn't have any money. I don't know, but it's.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it can. To be fair to Tyson, did it come from his mouth? I don't know.
Yeah, it came from his mouth. And to
Did
be
it?
fair, I heard Eddie Hearn were pressuring IFL to ask him about it. And to be fair to Coogan, he did ask him, and they shut him. Tyson shut him down, and he nipped it in bud. But the best thing to do with charity is just to go about it and not send out.
Do it nice and quiet, and do it voluntary.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who do a lot of things. I won't mention them because I don't think you do mention it. I think it's a humble thing to just do it quietly and not tell anybody. But I know some people who do some great things for local charities in Dewsbury. You know, people close to me who do some amazing things. And the most important thing you can do, as I've said earlier, is you just give up your time for people.
Yeah.
You know, if you see a beggar on the street, don't look down your nose at him and say he's off to buy some smack, he's off to buy 4 cans of ale. Sit down, have a little chat to him or her. Talk to them. You know, ask them if you can help. Ask them how the day is going, and just have a little bit of time, a little bit of humility for people. But don't, you know, it's like, I'm on one now. My last one. I'm not on Facebook now. I've not been on Facebook for ages. When you see these fucking people who film themselves giving money to charities and feeding the homeless and all this kind of stuff, how crass is that? It's like, don't do that. Just go about your business and do it quietly. That's my view, Russell.
Yeah. Okay then. All right then. Well, listen. Have a great evening, and I'll get this out tonight.
Thank you, mate. Always
no
good
problem.
to talk to you.
All the best.
See you.
Take
Thanks
care, mate.
for watching, everybody. Ta-ra, mate.
Right. Well, that was Julian McGowan. I hope you enjoyed that. And have we done there? 6:48. What were it? 5:30. We've had over an hour there. We ripped shit up, haven't we? Message to Dillian Whyte, aka the Lone Wolf. The can man. Anybody who wants it can get it, as long as they have a 40 and they've got COVID. Dillian, you're backed into a corner now, so sign that fucking contract, shithouse, because you've got 18, 17 days to go. And until that date, 21st of Feb, I'm going to keep my foot firmly pressed on your neck. All right, shithouse. Peace out.